Hi, my name is Excellent Health and I'm the healthiest man on the planet. Today I'm gonna answer questions from both YouTube and TikTok. This is health support. Oh, by the way, this video is sponsored by absolutely fucking nobody. Question number 1. How do you prevent balding and what causes it? So I want you to see balding as a sign of deterioration. I don't want you to see it as genetics or some isolated occurrence in your body that you had no control over, because that's total bullshit. Before we get into what a sign of deterioration is and all of that, let me just say that the reason it seems like balding is a genetic issue is because all humans are sick, but their genetics vary, and genetics play a role in this, but not in the way you think. It's not that you're gonna lose all your hair at a certain age, it's just that sometimes, depending on your genetics, hair is the first thing to fall because your body doesn't prioritize it over something else. So for me, as an example, the first thing to fall is my skin, my face. I get a lot of acne on my face. It was never my hair, but my friend, it was never acne, he never got acne, but his hair fell out. If you have a sign of deterioration, which is acne, which is being excessively pale or skinny, or any of the things you can list on your own, I mean, you don't really need to know what a sign of deterioration is. You were born being able to recognize what that is. You have to fix your internal environment, and then your hair will grow back, okay? Or, to prevent it altogether, you just take care of yourself before it even happens. The way you do this is by ensuring that you get enough nutrition and by minimizing exposure to man-made chemicals. And if you want to know how to achieve those two things of getting enough nutrition and avoiding environmental pollution, then just watch my videos. I think that I will throw out there that not many people mention is that oiling your hair is very good and it's also beneficial to the brain. So if you just take something like cold pressed extra virgin olive oil, or if you take avocado oil or coconut oil or bone marrow, raw butter, if you use oil on your hair, that will nourish the hair a lot and it will protect the hair against the pollution that might come out of your scalp. Because remember, your body throws out pollution from every single hole that it can throw out pollution from, and that's why when you do hair mineral analysis, you'll see that you'll find a lot of mercury, lead, cadmium in the hair, and that is of course affecting the follicle because that pollution is passing through the follicles, thereby damaging them. This is a question from TikTok. How do you know if something is being digested well? Well, it's quite easy. I mean, your stomach is over here and your intestines are down here. You'll know. You'll just know. You can feel it. It's all passing through here. And you can feel how your stomach feels. I mean, if something feels bad, if something is sitting there for too long, or if it's being hard to digest, your body will tell you that. Your body will make you nauseous, or it will deter you from moving by making you tired because it's having a lot of difficulty digesting something. And that's why you become tired, because all the energy is going over here. So you will feel it. And the person asked this question because they were wondering how I can recognize that raw meat is being digested better than cooked meat. And it's because of these reasons. It's because if I eat cooked meat, I feel like the meat sits in my stomach for much longer and I feel, less symptoms of indigestion. And I've had problems with my digestive system, so of course I'm very sensitive to that kind of stuff. Now, Swedish people love to ask me this question: how do you get raw milk? If we assume that you're in a stupid westernized country like I am, where raw milk is illegal, then I would do this if I were in your shoes, because I've already found the farm that I get raw milk from. So you just need to find the farm, alright? And this is what I would do. Go into Google Maps, search for farms, and it will tell you what farms are near you. And then you call those farms and you ask, okay, can you sell me raw milk? And if they say yes, then go there and get raw milk whenever you need to. If they say no, then you have to start thinking long term. Think about moving to a country where the food is cheap and it's high quality, and where there's lots of sun and free people and happy faces, okay? Southeast Asia, South America. This is one of my favorite questions. How do you ferment raw milk? Okay, you get the raw milk. You don't put it in the fridge. You can put it in the fridge, but it will take longer. You leave it outside, wherever you want, but you put a lid on it. doesn't, air can flow inside of it, it's alright. Air doesn't really matter. Just make sure that no dirt comes inside of it, because you know, in a home environment, you don't think about it, but there's dust everywhere in the air, and you're breathing that in. So get enough fat to protect yourself. But anyway, you leave it outside, and then because it has its wonderful natural bacteria intact, nothing weird is going to grow in it. Even if you throw some kind of fungus inside of there, the fungus will not grow inside the raw milk, because it can't. The raw milk already has its army of bacteria that won't let anything grow in there. If you pasteurize the milk, it will rot. If you don't pasteurize the milk, it will just ferment. You can leave raw milk outside in room temperature for 3 years. I don't care. You can leave it for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. You can proceed to eat it after 10 years and nothing will happen to you. A tip I will throw out, by the way, is that the sourness level will vary depending on how long you leave it outside. So what I do is I wait until it ferments and then I put it in the fridge. Why? Because I find that the sourness level, when it has just fermented, so very mild sourness, is preferable, at least to my taste buds. But funnily enough, when I had very, very weak digestion, when I had just started consuming raw milk and I saw that, oh my god, this thing is amazing, I wanted it very sour. So I never put it in the fridge. That goes to show how intelligent your taste buds are in relation to the rest of your body. Next question is, are tubers healthy and should you cook them? So to my knowledge, you can't eat tubers unless you cook them. And if your English is very bad, tubers are basically things like potatoes or sweet potatoes or yams, that kind of group of foods. Well, the thing is, they're a starch and they have their role for certain people. If we go by what Agnes Wonderplanet said, he said that if you're very emotional, cooked starches help bind with hormones and other stuff too, actually, like pollution, and it helps get them out of the body so that you can feel nice, basically. If you have anger issues, if you have anxiety, excessive depression, eating a meal with cooked starch once a week, something like that, or whenever you need it, is a good idea. The thing you have to realize about tubers and cooked starches in general is that if you cook, you're gonna create toxic byproducts, and two that come to mind are advanced glycation end products, which are a carcinogen, and acrylamide, which is also a carcinogen. These store in your body, and they're not easy to get rid of. So if you're gonna consume starches, you have to minimize the effect of these two. You have to make sure that they're stored in a very convenient manner, which is achieved by eating fat with the meal. And you have to realize that if you're a person who's developing, who might need carbohydrates to not be catabolic, then eating cooked starches might be an alright trade-off. But if you're old and you just like potatoes, well, I would advise against eating cooked starches then. Even if you're eating them with fat, even if you're doing everything perfectly, there's no reason for you to be consuming starch. But hey, let's not be dogmatic. If this old person likes potatoes, maybe their body's telling them something. All I know is that animal foods are much more nutritious. They don't create any toxic byproducts if you don't cook them, because you don't need to cook them. Tubers, you need to cook them. Starches, you need to cook them. But animal foods, you don't need to cook them. You don't need to cook any animal food, except maybe tongue. But hey, if you want a straight answer, I'd say that for someone who's young, if you take potatoes, if you boil them, then you mash them, maybe you spit on them to make them easy to digest. And I'm not even kidding, by the way. That's a thing that I think the Peruvians do when they're preparing tubers or something like that, because there's an enzyme in your spit that breaks down carbohydrates. Maybe you spit on it and then you blend a bunch of raw butter in those potatoes that you just mashed up. I wouldn't have anything against eating that. Oh, and I'm talking about my own spit, not someone else's, of course, unless you're a very attractive lady, in which I wouldn't have a lot against that unless you brush your teeth with fluoride or you eat unhealthy food. If you do that, then I wouldn't even kiss you. Here comes a question that I get on both TikTok and YouTube. Why is raw meat better than cooked meat? Now this one is very interesting. So first of all, are there any advantages to cooking meat? No, not at all. There is one. There's only one. And if you make something harder to digest by cooking it, then your stomach will have to expend more energy. And that might make you warmer. That might make you warmer. You might become more warm if you eat cooked food. Alright? Think about it. Raw meat is just perfectly intact muscle cells of the animal. If you cook it, you will just destroy these cells. That's it. They'll become like this instead of being perfectly, well, I don't know what shape a cell is. I mean, I guess it's something like this. I don't know. I guess it varies. Now I can hear your argument across the screen. You might be thinking that, well, if you cook the meat, then you're breaking down these cells, you're breaking down the components of the cells, thereby making it easier to digest the meat, because you've already broken it down. That's not true. That is not true at all. Now, let's look at any other animal that is able to handle raw meat. Well, let's take a lion. What do they use to break down raw meat? They use hydrochloric acid. What do humans use? Hydrochloric acid. Now, why do lions not cook the meat? Well, because they can't. They're not intelligent enough to create fire. But we are. We are. And we've done that. But was it really necessary? Well, it wasn't. It wasn't. First of all, we're using the same thing that any other animal uses to break down meat. And secondly, there are tribes that eat predominantly raw meat. All you're doing when you're cooking meat is destroying nutrients. That's it, okay? You've got very heat-sensitive B vitamins, very heat-sensitive vitamin C, and you've also got a bunch of lipids that will go, you know, they'll be oxidized. You've got oxygen in the air. You cook the meat, oxygen does this. It's not the same molecule anymore. The cholesterol that your liver produces is not oxidized. It's not cooked. It never exceeds your body temperature. But then these idiot carnivores think that, well, you get the same cholesterol if you cook 12 eggs and eat them. No, you're not getting the same cholesterol. You're getting oxidized cholesterol. If you eat the cholesterol raw, so you eat raw eggs, then you're getting the same cholesterol. But if you're cooking it, well, then it's not the same thing. Now, lastly, we have this notion of cooking meat making us evolve. This is stupid, okay? First of all, it's just a theory. It's not proven. Secondly, evidence for widespread use of fire dates back to 125,000 years ago. Humans have existed for 200 to 300,000 years. We haven't been cooking for a very, very long time. Now, there are people who will say that there is evidence for use of fire dating back 1,000,000 years. That is true. That is absolutely true. But we weren't isolated in one place 1,000,000 years ago. It's the same thing with us 300,000 years ago, or even 200,000 years ago. These are isolated cases in certain places. But again, I'm talking about widespread use of fire. That dates back to 125,000 years ago. So it is absolutely impossible for cooked meat to have made any significant change, alright? Because there's nothing special about it. It's just the oxidized version of raw meat. That's it. And we haven't been eating it for a large part of our evolution. We have been eating it for a very, very, very tiny part of our evolution, okay? And that's a very, very important thing to realize if you're gonna get out of this cooked meat dogma. If you want to know more about what I just said, then go get the book, The 6 Health Commandments. It tells you a lot about what I just said. Just to set the record straight, what made our brains grow bigger during our evolution was raw animal fat. We consumed a large amount of raw animal fat, which provided the necessary nutrients and fat to grow our brains, to maintain, sustain, and even increase the size of our brain. Next question. Is the organic label for eggs and meat enough to eat them raw? Well, let me tell you something. The organic label is simply a word on packaging. It doesn't actually tell you anything. And that's why all the meat that I eat right now is not organic. Because I recognize with that, at least when it comes to meat, we'll go to eggs later, at least when it comes to meat, this doesn't matter. And I'll tell you why. The only way to assess meat is you smell it, you taste it in its raw form, because if you cook meat, all cooked meat tastes the same, or it tastes more similar, even if the quality is different. And I'm not talking about things like different cuts, I'm talking about the same cut, but from different cows that have eaten different things. if you cook it, you won't be able to taste the difference. But if in its raw state, well, you've got the raw product, so you can assess the quality much better. So what I go for is, I look at the meat, and if it's dark red, then that's a good sign. But the most important sign for me is not organic or anything like that. It is, well, first of all, the taste. My secret when it comes to judging meat is actually to look at the fat. If the fat is yellow, then you can eat it. It doesn't matter if it's organic or not organic. I've seen horrible organic meat, and I've seen really good non-organic meat. In fact, most of the good meat that I find in the supermarket is not organic. When it comes to eggs, you've got the same concept, but it's a little bit different. Look at the egg. Don't smell it and don't taste it, because it doesn't smell like anything and it doesn't taste like anything. But if you look at it and you see that the yolk is a really deep orange, red kind of thingy, and it's not a pale yellow color, well, then obviously the egg is great. It's really all about buying the eggs and then eating the eggs. It's not really about organic or not organic. But as I said, organic is usually always better than not organic, at least when it comes to eggs. With meat, it's a different story. As for food safety, that's much harder to judge, because you have to think about pollution and how pollution interacted with bacteria. Again, bacteria by themselves are not dangerous at all. Not dangerous at all. They don't do anything. If you put them in the wrong environment, they will start producing things that are toxic. That's why if you ferment a cooked steak, which is completely dead and poisonous, if you leave bacteria on there and you let the bacteria eat the steak and then shit it out, and then you eat the steak, you will die, or you will get severe food poisoning. If you ferment cooked food, you will get food poisoning. If you ferment raw food, which presents a very beautiful environment for the bacteria, you will get no problems. So the problem is always pollution. I would say that in most cases, there's nothing wrong whatsoever with eating raw meat, even if it's supermarket meat. As long as it doesn't look really, really ridiculous, and as long as it's vacuum packed, it's alright. Lastly, it doesn't matter, okay? If a food can't be eaten in its raw state for any reason, then it shouldn't be eaten in its cooked state. So if you're concerned about bacterial food poisoning because you bought low quality beef, well, why are you buying low quality beef? You shouldn't even be eating that in its cooked state. So that's why I say, if you can't eat it raw, then don't eat it. A follow-up question: how about raw fish? I assume only wild Alaskan fish is worth eating raw due to sea pollution. Is that it? Else, only cooked? Well, again, if you can't eat the fish raw, then you shouldn't be eating it at all, okay? And in fact, eating it raw, if it has pollution, is much safer than eating it cooked. Why? Because a fish, any biological organism, will intelligently store the pollution in its tissue so that it doesn't hurt the cells, okay? If you cook this bundle of cells that has stored pollution, well, then the pollution is going to go haywire. It's not going to be bound to anything. It's not going to be stored in the same way that it was, chemically. It's not going to be bound to the molecules that the fish used to neutralize the pollution. This bond is going to break, so the pollution becomes a free radical, and it will create much more damage inside of your body if you eat it in its cooked state. This concept also applies to beef, it applies to eggs, it applies to any raw food. Yet another follow-up question. If my best meat supplier had organic 100% grass-fed beef with cows in the nature, but had vaccines only shortly after being born, would they be safe enough to eat? Now in this case, I would eat the meat and I would eat the fat. In my experience, even if the cow is fairly unhealthy, you can still eat the meat and you can still eat the fat raw. No problems at all. It's even safer if you eat it raw. And from a bacterial standpoint, again, bacteria don't hurt you. The environment plus bacteria hurts you. And with environment, I mean pollution. Now, according to my own experience and also according to Augenes Wonderplanets, if you have a cow that has gotten vaccines or is highly polluted, so any supermarket meat, organs are not going to be ideal because for some reason they affect you. the pollution affects you. But when it comes to muscle meat and the fat of the animal, you're usually alright. But in these conditions that you described, I would say that you can eat organs, but not too much. To reiterate, if everything is perfect and the cow only got one vaccine at the beginning of its life, I think you can eat the muscle meat and the fat raw without any problems. Thoughts on soaking raw food to remove anti-nutrients. I do that with almonds and walnuts, even though I have been reducing nuts due to omega-6 to 3 ratios. You see, you could take nuts and you could soak them for 24 hours, and then you could peel them, and then you could grind them up with some type of fat, coconut fat, butter, bone marrow, and then you could ferment that, and then maybe you could consume that, and maybe it would be alright. But do you really need to? I don't think you need to do that. I think you could just stick to animal foods and fruit, and maybe cooked starches if you're a woman, or if you're very erratic, if you feel like you have a bunch of hormones and exercise isn't helping you, not to the extent that it should, then you can also include cooked starches. But other than that, I mean, nuts and seeds, they don't do a lot for humans. If you want a nut recipe, you can check out Agenus Wonderplanet's nut formula. I would do that, or the thing I just described, which I got from Varys Ahmad. Next question. Is it worth to drop some AC vinegar on raw eggshells, and perhaps meat fish too, just to prevent cross-contamination? No. If you're gonna get sick from eating raw foods, it's gonna be because you consumed pollution, because it came from a low quality source. And when I say low quality, usually low quality isn't enough to make you sick. I mean, I've went to Marks and Spencer and they have some shit meat over there in Manchester. And I've eaten the organic stuff, and the organic stuff isn't even comparable to the non-organic stuff in Sweden. It's garbage. I've eaten that, and it was ground beef. It was a pound of ground beef. Nothing happened to me. I would be confident in eating low quality, raw muscle meat. Look, it's not ideal. I'm not saying that it's healthy, but I'm saying that if I'm in another city and I need to eat, then I could pick that. I wouldn't have any problems eating that if I was hungry, because it's the best alternative I've got. But hey, let's not get sidetracked. The important part is to realize that you get sick from consuming pollution, not bacteria. The bacteria aren't responsible for the environment. Again. So, if the problem is pollution, then apple cider vinegar won't really do anything. Next question. Would you caution against eating liver during the winter months, on account of inadequate sunlight for vitamin D synthesis? I know that there is a certain ratio of the fat-soluble vitamins A, D, and K2 that should be kept in balance for optimal health, and I don't think vitamin D supplements can even remotely replace sun exposure. Perfect point. So I'm just wondering if it's even useful to eat a high vitamin A food like liver when there is no sunlight during winter, or just stick to muscle meat and fat. Now, before we answer the question, some of you might be wondering why this person isn't taking a vitamin D supplement to solve the entire equation. Well, the thing is, as this person intelligently pointed out, supplements don't work, okay? Just think about it. How are you going to take a nutrient from some other source and then package it in a capsule without demolishing it? And if you want to know more about this topic, check out this video over here. Okay, so to answer the question, should you eat vitamin A rich foods if you live in the northern hemisphere and you can't get vitamin D for large parts of the year? I would say yes, because you still require vitamin A. You need vitamin A, I mean, there's no way around it, you need to consume it. Now, you won't eat enough liver to deplete your vitamin D. I don't think so, at least. I mean, I'm assuming that you're not gonna eat 200, 300 grams of liver every day. I mean, what I do is I only consume liver when I feel like consuming it. So that might be once a month maybe, because I feel like my vitamin A levels are already at the place where they should be. And so when I eat liver, I don't get as much of an effect anymore. So the answer is eat it, but don't eat it too often. Okay, here comes the holy grail of YouTube health and fitness questions. How do I increase testosterone? Now let me answer this question. And I've thought about this question. And I have a very, very good answer. Now listen closely. Your body has to make decisions, okay? You've got mercury in your brain, and you've got aluminum in your liver, and you've got a bunch of shit in your lymphatic system, and you're throwing out a bunch of shit through your skin. You've got energy requirements, you've got hormone requirements, your pancreas needs to be repaired, your hair needs to grow, your nails need to grow. You have a bunch of requirements, okay? Your body has to do a bunch of stuff. And it needs to take the food that you eat and it needs to distribute these resources adequately, right? If you have low testosterone, that means that your body is prioritizing something else because you're so sick that it can't use resources to produce testosterone. So that's why if you eat low fat or low cholesterol, you won't produce a lot of testosterone, because the fat that you do eat and the cholesterol that you do eat needs to go to your liver, it needs to go to your brain. It can't go to producing testosterone because your brain and your liver are more important than producing testosterone. So what you need to do is, you need to increase the resources and you need to lower the tax. Okay, so what do I mean by lower the tax? First of all, make sure no pollution is coming in. Make sure that the food you eat is perfect, and that means that you're not eating any pollution. And when I say pollution, I don't mean mercury and aluminum. Not only that, I mean it's easy to avoid mercury, but it's harder to avoid vegetable oils, and vegetable oils are pollution. Again, your body does things with the resources that come in. You need to eat enough saturated fat and cholesterol for your body to have enough resources for it to consider increasing your testosterone production to where it should be. Remember, you're not eating saturated fat and cholesterol so that your balls can produce more testosterone. You're eating saturated fat and cholesterol because every single cell in your entire body needs those two things, okay? Including your balls. So in many cases, health problems come about due to your body prioritizing something else because of your bad decisions, because of your environmental factors. If you don't eat enough food, well, your body has to distribute what's coming in somehow. Something's gonna fall, okay? It might be your skin, it might be your hair, it might be your hormones. Who knows? So to summarize, if you want to increase testosterone, you have to create the ideal environment for your body to produce testosterone without being worried that those resources that went into the creation of that testosterone had to go somewhere else. If you want to do something good for the world, please like this video, because then YouTube will send this video out to more people so that they can click on it, okay? So like the video if you want to do something good for the world, share it if you have a friend or a family member that might need it, and with that said, go and achieve excellent health. I know you can do it.